This Capture the Flag challenge is called Jackby. It's in the miscellaneous category, dubbed with a medium difficulty. However, only 86 people solved it during the runtime of the NomCon Capture the Flag. This is a challenge that I created. I put this together, and it says, wow! Jack is trying to learn one of the hottest new programming languages. And on top of that, he wants you to learn it too. He's given you access to his development box, so generous of him. He says, just don't hack it, please. So this is a privilege escalation challenge. We need to escalate your privileges and retrieve the contents out of the /root flag.txt file. We could start this instance up. This is one of the dynamic per user dedicated instances. I will be running this locally, but it requires SSH to log in. Now, I am running this challenge locally just for the sake of the video showcase. I will go ahead and SSH into myself, localhost running on port 22. I can enter the credentials that were provided, user pass, and now I'm this user at Jackby. This is a privilege escalation challenge, so maybe the first thing we try is taking a look at our sudo permissions. So I'll use sudo tac-l to list out what we might be able to do, and it looks like we can, in fact, run without a password for another user, Jack, actually use Nimble run. So a little bit of the gimmick here, that's the challenge name, Jack Be Nimble, and with that, we could try to escalate our privileges. If you aren't familiar, Nimble is the package manager for the Nim programming language. You can take a look. Hey, they've got it on GitHub. This is the package manager for the Nim programming language. It's the default, and with that, you could do anything you particularly want to. Same way you would with like Cargo, same thing you would for maybe pip, other equivalents in other languages, but Nimble gives us some fun runway, because the same way you could Go run or Cargo run, Nimble will allow us to run, and presumably that gives us just the capability to run Nim code as that other user, Jack. Now that is the only command that we're allowed to run as Jack. Static, no asterisk or other things with a wildcard here. We can only run Nimble run. But at least as our current user, we could just initialize a project. Like, hey, put together a Nimble source code project. So if I Nimble init to initialize something, you know what? We should probably actually make a directory to house our code in. I'll move into the temp directory. We can just call this like nim project, nim proj. And if I were to then Nimble init, it'll prompt me. Ooh, we'll go ahead and initialize a package here. Our name, I'll just hit enter to be anonymous. It'll let us choose what kind of package we'd like to create here. Whether it's a library, a binary, or hybrid, we'll need to move through with tab. I actually just want a binary, right? Because what if we were to try and actually just execute code as that Jack user? Nimble run allows us to do that, so I'll just keep hitting enter here until I can actually have our Nim project set up and created. It gives us a nimproj.nimbled file, in which case we could play with maybe something else if we wanted to, but because we just can Nimble run right now, let's actually go work with the source code. That has the nimproject.nim file, which is simply just our hello world. Not super duper interesting, but at least I could then sudo with Jack as our user, Nimble run. And that will go ahead and spin stuff up, but okay, that errored and whined. Can you see why? Let's see. We have a permission denied. Actually, because we can't even manipulate these files in this directory, presumably because this location is owned by the user. If I were to ls-tac-la, here you can see just our user is what owns nimproj, but Jack needs to be able to work in there, right? So what we could do is chmod, I guess make that recursive, 777, just about everything in the nimproj directory. Now that way, hey, we should just as well let Jack be able to mess with things just as well. If I move in there one more time, we'll go back into our nimproj directory. Let me sudo tac-u jack nimble run. Fingers crossed, that builds, and now we have a simple, stupid hello world. Obviously, that hasn't done anything worthwhile or interesting for us, but because we can just run code as Jack, we can escalate our privileges, just giving nim syntax to run a new shell command. With that, let me see if I can nano our hello nimproj.nim whatever, and we don't really need any special syntax highlighting, but I would like to import os proc. That'll allow us to, hey, run some operating system processes and procedures. We can let a new variable shell actually equal our osproc.start process, and the actual parameter that we'll include there, really what we want to run, is just bin bash, right? Hey, actually spawn a shell for us. We'll say other args that we supply. Well, that can just be an empty list here. And then options, we'll actually specify a PO parent streams. I believe that's a constant or something from os.proc. In fact, we probably don't even need to be explicit in calling that. Nim makes that easy for us. And I think that should be in curly braces there. Now we can, will Nim let me compile that without actually using the variable? I don't know. Let's just echo shell exited with code and then exit code. That's fine. Control O to save that. We'll write that file. Control X to break out of nano. And now I believe we can sudo nimble run just as we did previously, letting that execute as Jack. Fingers crossed. Heck yeah. Now we are the Jack user. That's all it took. Just needed quick interactive shell within nim. Now, let's get back to Jack's home directory. And oh, we actually have some tricks here. learningnim.md is a file in that current directory. We could go take a look now that we are that Jack user. What does that actually contain here? Catting that file out, learning nim, written by Jack. Okay, to do, learn nim. Some notes here. Dependency downloads and connections have been giving me trouble. I left etc host as a world writable as a temporary fix. Okay. I added networking capabilities to Python to host easy local development servers. And then more to do is to clean up that above. So obviously I left this for the player, as a hint as to what you might be able to do here. Because look, if we were to sudo tackl now, even as Jack, we can run some commands as root. In fact, really just one sort of. We could do nimble install without a password with an asterisk. So a wildcard. We can include anything onto the end of a nimble install command. So the same way we just use nimble run, but now we can use nimble install, and that might allow us to pull down other libraries, packages, dependencies, things that we might like. Now let me be honest, this challenge was all put together under the premise of, look, I want to get nim in this game some way, somehow. Nim is not really a command that we might just be able to run. In fact, it is, but what version of nim are we using here? TAC version tells me, oh, that's the nim compiler 1.2.6 up to 2020. So a little bit old, right? How about nimble? We've been playing with that already. Will nimble TAC version tell me, oh, okay, 0.12.0. So a little bit old, right? Compiled recently, but that doesn't mean, okay, the version of nimble is really up to date. We could start to Google and research if we wanted to. Is there anything that we might be able to do or take advantage of if we nimble install on potentially such an old version? Can I just like Google nimble exploit? Is that a thing? Nimble streamer from exploitdb. CVE for nimble. Okay, none of those are particularly interesting. How about nimble exploits? Process injection from Husky Hacks. Okay, cool. Ooh, consensus. Nim insecure SSL, TLS defaults, and nimble shell. What is that? This looks worthwhile. Nim, insecure SSL, TLS defaults, man in the middle, and nimble shell command injection. Okay, affected versions for nimble and nim, version are equal to or less than 1.2.6, check. Nimble version less than or equal to 0.12.0, check. Okay, this must be where we want to be. We have a couple gimmicks here where the HTTP client does no peer certificate validation. Nimble will fall back to insecure transports if HTTPS is blocked. Nimble shell command injection when fetching a package for an install, still unfixed. Maybe these are fixed, but at the very least, the version that we're up against for this Capture the Flag challenge does not have that patch put to life. Oh, actually, while we're chatting about vulnerabilities, I'd love to take this as an opportunity to tell you about the sponsor of today's video. And wait, look. The only way that I am able to keep getting free videos just like these out for you. Free cybersecurity education, free show and tell, free demos. Look, even Capture the Flag competitions. I have to pay the challenge developers, content developers more than just myself. We pay to host the infrastructure. the only way that I can make it free for you at the end of the day is with the help of some sponsorship. So I hope you understand that. And with that, I'll let you take it away. Tracked. IT and security pros alongside business owners are sometimes scared to patch critical systems because those updates might introduce breaking changes. But Tracked helps answer the question, will this patch break anything? Tracked offers continuous vulnerability identification and automated patching all in one standalone tool, but with a twist. They provide insight on if and how these changes affect other environments. Data is anonymously collected to give you peace of mind and see whether or not a patch has been applied 5, 10, 100, or 1,000 times across other networks, and if it's been disruptive or hindered operational capability. And the best part? Tracked is free, because the more patches applied with Tracked, the better it is for everyone. Finding and patching vulnerabilities with Tracked will be free forever, because it benefits everyone if everyone uses it, even nonprofits, charities, or shops with limited or no budget. There's a pro paid version available for those who need more advanced features, but even free tier users help the whole cybersecurity community decrease vulnerability risk. You can sign up with my link below and start using Tracked without talking to a salesperson. I don't think Tracked even has any. But if you'd like a demo, the folks at Tracked would be happy to walk you through things and answer your questions in a quick 20-minute call. Seriously, try Tracked completely for free at jh.live/tracked. Huge thanks to Tracked for sponsoring this video. So what can we do here? If we had either a, HTTPS certificate for things that we might host, then it will fail to validate certificate due to insecure HTTP client defaults. Falls back to HTTP URL when fetching packages. Ooh, I wonder if in the hints of the learning nim.md file, using etc. hosts could allow us to break regular capability when we were to try to call out to GitHub or Google or whatever to actually download other nim packages. That's worth exploring. What does that do? They're using Nimble Refresh Debug, where they couldn't get to GitHub, so they go someplace else. We could break GitHub, right? Because we could manipulate etc. hosts, and then maybe host our own irclogs.nim.org? Maybe? Let me see if we could build that first. Let's take a look at the permissions on etc. hosts. And it is not world writable. Okay, so a little bit of a gotcha on that, but it is owned and writable by Jack, which is worthwhile. Can I edit our etc. hosts file and then actually kind of sinkhole or break the capability to get to github.com? Removing that domain by setting it, you know what? Just resolve to nil, whatever. Save this. Now, obviously trying to ping github.com. Do we even have ping? Okay, well, sure, that gets quad 0 though. That wouldn't mean that we were able to access it on port 443. So when they used Nimble Refresh Debug, we should see, ooh, we can't actually reach github.com anymore. Connection refused. And irclogs nim.org, whatever, packages.json couldn't download 404 not found. Ooh, that is HTTP though, just as they suggested. Could we fake that? And that's why we must be able to actually have Python, simple HTTP server or whatever. It is Python 2, right? So Python 3 is not installed because usually you'd use Python 3 tac-m http.server just to rapidly spin up an on-the-fly HTTP server, but we don't have that. We'll need to use Python 2 tac-m simple HTTP server. Normally, this will just by default host something on port 8000, but we want to have that listen on port 80 in this case, which is why, the note said we've added the capability for Python to be able to do that. This is all, by the way, let me break the illusion. This is the intended, or at least what I had in mind when crafting and putting together this challenge. If we actually were to break out into another terminal, let me SSH to user at localhost. That's fine. We can get back into temp and our nim project. just because I want a quick and easy way to be able to become that Jack user. Nimble run, that's fine. Now I'm Jack. Let me move into temp. Let's make another directory like dub. And realistically, we should go spin up our HTTP server in that location. So I'll run that. And now I could, presumably, just like we saw when we ran nimble refresh tac debug, that would try to go to irclogs.nimlang.org with a packages.json. So can I create our own packages.json file and then force it to get our data? Just to validate what that blog post was doing, right? Let me nano a packages.json. Hello, please subscribe. And now let me edit our etc hosts file because we need to also sinkhole 0.0.0.0 IRC logs. Well, actually, no, we want to point that to ourselves, right? So 127001 on that. Yeah. Will that work? Let's try that nimble refresh debug command one more time with our HTTP server listening, and you saw it come through. Take a look. Downloaded packages.json file is invalid, discarding, but we did get it to hit. That's pretty sweet. So looking back at this consensus write-up, this article here says, nimble arbitrary code execution for specifically or specially crafted package metadata. Oh, there's like command injection, and literally when it tries to parse a URL, one to directly execute shell commands. Oh, and they have a packages.json example where they would be able to, with the response that came from packages.json, actually inject code with a semicolon there, just stacking another command. So could we write our own? How about that? Update package list and install file size with refresh debug. Install file size to trigger the vulnerable code path. And then you can see it was executed. Interesting. Can we do that? Let me go edit our packages.json here. Let's kill what we had and now paste in everything for this file size file. And we could touch a temporary code execution thing to validate, or we could like copy, I don't know, the root flag, because it is being ran as root, bring it into the temporary directory as flag.txt. That would at least give us the flag, or if we wanted to, we could actually make bin bash setuid, and that way we can get a full root shell in a quick and easy way. Would that work? Let's save this, and now let's try nimble refresh debug. Package list is now downloaded, looking good. Now what we needed to do, well, hang on, is let's validate. Bin bash is not setuid to start. Okay, no, it's not. So now let's nimble install with sudo, remember, sudo tac u root, so that makes sure it runs. And we'll install file size was the name of that package. Will that work? Download it from the internet? Yes. Your internet is now me, right? Yes or no? Let's start with no for now. File size not found in any, no. Okay, it didn't bother doing it. What if we say that we check from the internet this time? That's fine, yes. What is in packages.json? It's file size. Run it, do it. Okay, it did it. Presumably, downloading from Google, root flag.txt, temp.flag. Perfect. It errored because it's all going weird, but like ls tac la bin bash, setuid binary. Okay, cool. So now we can bash, whoa, I can type bash tac p, and now we are, hello? Can I move into the root directory? I can't, no. What is that? Did I get that wrong? Bin bash tac p? I could have sworn that would make me root. Maybe it's just this Alpine image that does that weird. One way or another, inside of our temp directory, we should have flag.txt. And now that is really owned by root, but can I access it because I am inside of the temp directory? No. Okay. What about nano flag.txt? We could just fix the permissions though. Let's edit our packages.json file again, and let's include a chmod 777 on temp flag.txt, right? Sudo root nimble install file size again. Okay, that failed. Good. Do we have our temp flag.txt file owned? No. All right, so obviously this is finicky. Could we remove the nimble cache? How about that? How about we copy it to flag2, and let's try that. No, you know what? You can see it like doesn't even have that command in there. Our packages must be getting all muffed up. And in fact, those are stored in like a .nimble directory in the home folder. So maybe I go in there, actually take a look at our packages official.json, and that's all that it is. Oh, so that pulls it down, but it didn't seem to run it. What if we rmtac-r our .nimble directory, just for the sake of, hey, showcasing this will work. Let's stop and start our little HTTP server, and then nimble refresh tac debug, pull that down. How about we change the name of this? Sudo nimble install file size 2, maybe? Yep, totally cool to pull it down. Run it again. There we go. Now we have our flag2.txt. That should properly have all the permissions necessary. Excellent. Let's go cat out our flag2.txt, and there is our flag. I don't know why bashtacp just didn't give me root, though. Well, anyway, that is the intended solution of JACB. That is what I had in mind. That was manipulating, maybe the parameters, locations, places, endpoints that it will reach out to with HTTPS or HTTP if you can get it to fall back for this version of Nimble. However, there were some really cool write-ups that came to light because of this. In fact, some folks could do, for one thing, actually some capability that doesn't require manipulating the HTTP parameters. Like, if I were to go home and I were to reset my etc hosts, right? And if we didn't and weren't able to control that, kind of a neat thing, for this version, you would be able to still nimble refresh, tac debug if you want that, but that will now pull down the real legitimate packages from GitHub. Now, remember, we actually saw those inside of a .nimble directory for our current user, so we could actually move into .nimble, and that will give us the real, legitimate, genuine packages official.json. If I cat them all out, these are all of the actual nimlang, nimble things we could pull down. But there's nothing particularly stopping us from editing this file, packages official.json, and like say the shell command or any of these. Say I wanted to get code execution through just this, we actually could, without specifying, pull this down from GitHub, but actually using local packages. So let me just do a touch temp alternative. How about that's fine? That way it just validates, look, we get code execution. So I'll exit out of this, and if I were to then get in the home directory, we could sudo tac u root nimble install, but there is another little parameter we could supply. If we wanted to download that shell command package that we've just modified in packages.official, whatever, we could now actually say the tac nimble directory, nimble dir, should be that .nimble hidden directory, location that we were just in for the packages. Running that, it will just do whatever we want. In this case, you can see it's actually pulling down, trying to pull down with that URL, the code that has command injection, and obviously our temp alternative was in there. Why did touch not work? Did I get the syntax for touch wrong? Packages official. Is there a new line in the way? Is that what did it? Presumably. I feel like Nano just naturally added a new line. So that is one clever trick, actually installing from the packages.json file that you set up, configure locally in your own Nimble directory. You're still relying on the vulnerability for this version of Nimble, right? Nimble TAC version 0.12.0. But that's kind of a cutesy gimmick. That way, hey, you didn't even need to mess with etc host or do some of that Python edit capability shenanigans thing. In fact, there's even more that could be done in another alternative solution. This is one write-up, credit where credit is due, from Game Over in LeetSpeak. He was going through this challenge, and he actually had kind of an interesting thing that I hadn't seen before, which apparently is just what you can do with Nimble, and that you could actually go ahead and set up different hooks for things that you want to actually execute or run as a new package is installed. If we actually see this exploit.nimble that he prepares and puts together, he kind of puts this together after he's gone through and actually, hey, escalated to the Jack account. But Nimble packages, even avoiding the silly notes that I left behind in the hints here, they say like, look, you could actually have hooks set up to execute commands before installing. And that is kind of wild. That way you could execute whatever you want, like, hey, echo who am I and all the output of that, and the contents of the root flag.txt. Set up any backdoors, set up any persistence that you might like. That is pretty sweet. He actually made this as a fully available repo that we could go pull down and work with. This is totally public. Like, hey, you could use this. It is presumably a replica of Python cmd.py, but in Nim. I didn't know if Python, probably in pip, has some other hooks capability to be able to do that. But neat. We could see in the cmd.nimble, in which case, go ahead and read this exploit and get the flag. Let's see, can we just install that? That should be literally everything that we need to do. Sudo as root, nimble install, and then just paste in the URL for that repository, and it should execute. That's pretty sweet. Look, I got to learn even some things of my own after hosting Capture the Flag competitions and making these challenges just as well. So thank you for teaching me. I gotta say, I think this technique is very, very cool because that doesn't even rely on the version like 0.12.0 of Nimble. Like you could just naturally do this for any Nimble package. If you had some hooks set up and you could kind of manipulate, hey, how things get installed for projects and dependencies, or manipulate that .nimble file. Hey, thank you so much, everyone, for watching this video. I hope you had some fun. I hope you learned something new. I hope you enjoyed that Jack B Capture the Flag challenge from NonCon CTF. Jack B Nimble, that was the gimmick in the play with the challenge name, but I hope you had some fun, and I hope you got to play NomCon CTF. If not, we'll have the challenges up and available on like Name Your Price training sometime soon in the future. But thank you so much for watching. Please do all those YouTube algorithm things. Like, comment, subscribe. Please do give some love to our sponsors. Link in the video description. Seriously, that's the only way the channel can keep doing what it's doing. So with that, I'll see you in the next video.